here. It says 309, Miss Grace Randolph, everybody's favorite blonde-headed grifter, decides to tweet, I hear reports of building out the Reeves-verse are true with additional filmmakers. I think that's crazy to have competing fully fledged cinematic universes. DC Studios. I would like to point out, I believe it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where they announced Matt Reeves was going to do Batman, then it was Penguin, then it was a Gotham PD show, then it was this, and it was that. Like, it was just so many different things were getting announced. And now people are trying to sit here and say, oh, well, this just means, what Grace Randolph is saying just means Matt Reeves is going to build a universe that has Justice League, Superman, Green Lantern, Flash, all of them, and it's going to compete against what James Gunn is doing. No. Warner Brothers and DC Studios, they're not stupid. They're not. What do people not understand? That you can't compete with yourself. You just can't do it. It's bad enough that DC is competing against Marvel, competing against Netflix, competing against any other of these companies that are making super Amazon with The Boys. It's bad enough they have to compete with them. But to then have to compete with themselves, it's not going to happen. They are creating the Matt Reeves Bat universe, in a sense. And yes, they have been talking for years about expanding out on it. For some reason, they thought a Penguin show was going to be the best thing to start with. I don't know why. I don't think he was all that charismatic of a character in the movie. But that's my opinion. Some people love it. I don't want to yuck on your yum. Enjoy it if you want. But here's the thing. If they build out this universe, they're just going to build out the rogues gallery for Batman. They're just going to build out Gotham. It's always been talked about how this is going to be similar to Nolan's Batman, where it's very realistic and grounded. When you start bringing in the Flash, Superman, and Green Lanterns and Wonder Womans, that gets it away from being grounded. And that is a problem right there, because now you have people who are sitting there saying that James Gunn there's no confidence in James Gunn when it comes to DCU. As you see here, there's no way they have money for both, so Gunn may be starting to lose grip. All right. James Gunn hasn't even started. His universe hasn't even come out. To sit there and act like he's lost grip, oh, there's no confidence in James Gunn, is completely asinine. It really is. And I say this because James Gunn has a vision. He's created a plan. Let's just say he makes this 10-year plan, presents it to David Zaslav and the Warner Brother heads, and they're all like, yeah, we love it. Let's go for it. They set up DC Studios. He starts pre-production. He's writing. He's casting. He's doing all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, before anything even gets made, they go, oh, on second thought, we're going to go over here and just do this. It doesn't make sense. People want to create issues. They want to create turmoil. They want to create anything that will make James Gunn look bad. Why? Because they want DC to fail for no damn reason. I don't care who's in charge of DC Studios. It could be James Gunn. It could be Kevin Feige. It could be Patty Jenkins. Hell, it could be what's her name? Greta Gerwig. It could be whomever. Kathy Kennedy. I don't care who's in charge of DC Studios. Regardless of who is in charge, I'm going to hope that they make damn good content. That the content they make makes me want to see it. Makes me excited to see it. That is how we should be looking at this. Everybody should be looking at it that way. You may not like James Gunn. You may think he's a shitty director, a crappy writer, a terrible producer. But regardless of that, you should be sitting there saying, look, I don't like what he does, but I hope that he gets the right filmmakers, right writers, right producers to help him build this out to where I enjoy it. Is that so hard to do? Let's say we're 4 or 5 movies in and you don't like any of it. Sure, then you can start criticizing and saying, calling for his head like people do with Kathy Kennedy right now. That makes sense. But to call for his head before we've seen even an inkling of the DCU is crazy. And don't give me this crap that, well, I didn't like the Suicide Squad, or I don't like Guardians of the Galaxy, or I didn't like Peacemaker. He is not a one-trick pony. You can see that between Scooby-Doo, Dawn of the Dead, Peacemaker, Guardians of the Galaxy, everything that he's ever done. It's almost vastly different. There's not anything that feels exactly the same, whether he's writing or directing. He's not a one-trick pony. He can do multiple things. He is a talented writer. So give him a chance. And even if you don't want to say, yeah, I support what he's doing, sit back and say, I hope he makes something I like. I hope he does well with this. I hope he treats Superman with respect. That makes sense. That makes sense. Let's see what people are saying over here. Lauren says, one big DC universe is good enough. We don't need a Justice League and Matt Reeves universe. Triton says, biting tongue intensifies. Lauren says, I care about who is writing the DC project the most. Again, you should hope for the best. You don't have to like the guy, but hope for the best. We know that all of the bitching and moaning and crying and screaming on social media is not going to change anything right now. They're going full steam ahead with James Gunn creating the DCU. So why don't we wait? And I'm not saying go see Blue Beetle. I'm not saying go see Aquaman. Look, I will never tell you to go see a movie you don't want to see. But I will call you out whenever you start criticizing movies that aren't even out yet, movies that haven't even been written yet, movies that aren't in any kind of production at all at this point. Because that's just dumb. Like, you haven't seen anything. So that's where I stand on this. And here's the thing. James Gunn is going to be successful. He's going to be successful. You may not like to hear that, but there's a big difference between what is going to happen with the DCU than what happened with the DCEU. And that big difference is vision. But Zack Snyder had vision. You're right, he did. Not wrong. But it wasn't just his vision that was there. It was Jeff Johns. It was Kevin Tushihara. It was John Berg. It was, Patty Jenkins. It was James Wan. They all came in there, all had these other ideas, were being told different things from different people, and nothing could come together. Then you had the backstabbing and everything. We know the story of what happened in 2015, 16, 17. We know that. But that's the major difference right now. We have James Gunn, Peter Safran, and I'm sure they're going to have a group of story people. I'm sure they're going to get some producers. They're going to get great directors. James Mangold's going over there. We got Andy Muschietti going over there. They're going to be working on films. So I'm not worried from that aspect. But the other big difference is it's going to be fresh. And as I said last week, and I keep bringing this up because I really want to know how James Gunn intends to make sure the audience knows this is new, this is different, this is separate from what you were seeing till 2023. I want to know how he's going to differentiate that for the general audience. Because as long as he's able to do that, and he does it in a good way, he's going to be successful. You're going to see a new Superman. You're going to see a new Lois. You're going to see a new Batman. You're going to see a new this. People will get excited. And obviously the look, the aesthetic is going to be very, very different from what we've seen from the DCEU, which was built off of the Zack Snyder aesthetic. And I talked about that last week. Very dark, very orange and gloomy, and dark colors, muted colors. That's what the DCEU was. You take a look at Aquaman, very bright movie, billion-dollar film. But then again, you have Wonder Woman 84, bright movie, but it was just terribly written. So that wasn't a good example. But I think that's what they're going to go for. The aesthetic, the look, the feel is going to be very different from the DCEU. I want to know what's going on, why it keeps flashing like that. Biting tongue. Triton says, damn it, you beat me to the Snyder remark. Lawrence, yeah, I'm giving Andy Muschietti a chance for Batman Brave and the Bold, even though I didn't like some things he did in the Flash movie. Again, I mean, Andy Muschietti, he's good. I mean, I loved the It films. And then I enjoyed the Flash. He's a very talented filmmaker. I think given more freedom and better direction as well, it's kind of contradicting there, I understand. But remember, the Flash was just hampered in rewrites and different directors and what's going on with Ezra Miller and this and that. I think Brave and the Bold, I think, is going to be very different because it's going to be written, they're going to approve it, and then he's going to have the freedom to do what he wants to do with the direction of, remember, this is all connected to this. Because the Flash, it's like, what is it connected to? Is it the Snyderverse? Is it DCEU? Is it this? Is it that? There's always those questions being asked, and he could never really answer them. Now he's going to have a better direction with that and be able to flesh out the story a lot better. Lawrence says, true. Triton, you know my thoughts on all this and my reasons for my thoughts. Too long, I was battered, beaten, screwed around, etc. I'm often happiest forgetting DC exists. And I'm hoping, Triton, and you know, what I'm hoping is there comes a time when you can sit back and watch a DC film, a DCU film, a James Gunn run DCU film, and enjoy yourself and be taken away. That's what I hope for anybody. Those who are naysayers, those who want Snyder back, those who don't want Snyder back. I don't care who you are. I want you to be able to go to one of these films and just be happy and excited that you're watching it. That's what I want whenever I go see a movie. And that's what we should be hoping for. This idea that we have to beat down James Gunn because we don't like him and hope that he gets fired, knowing full well that it would delay DC content from coming out, knowing well that, you know, it could very well put an end to DC content coming out for a long while. It makes no sense to me. Why do people want Blue Beetle to fail? Why are people boycotting Blue Beetle? Why are people boycotting it? There's no reason at this point. You're not hurting anybody by boycotting it, but your enjoyment. Go check it out. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe you don't. But by boycotting it, what does it really do? It takes the money out of the pockets of the current Warner Brothers regime. They already have written DC off this year. After the failure that Flash was, I think they sit there and they say, you know what? We can't count on Blue Beetle. We can't count on Aquaman. So let's not count on him. That's simple. And I think at this point, Blue Beetle, which was supposed to be a straight-to-streaming film, I mean, you can't expect much anyways. Aquaman's a different story. Again, I'm not saying go watch the movie. I'm not saying you have to watch a movie. I just think that this desire for wanting something to fail because you don't like James Gunn or you think that he put his hand in the film, like, to me, that's just, you know, on Twitter today, there's a guy that just was coming up with all of this stuff about James Gunn, saying James Gunn rewrote the Flash movie to fit his agenda. And it's like, where are you getting this information? People are just coming and pulling shit out of their ass, which I guess makes sense because anyway, but they're pulling this stuff out of their ass to try and look smart and to justify why they're boycotting it, but it's not true. A lot of the times people just say things because they're like, oh, we're not supposed to like James Gunn. Well, I can't like James Gunn either. So, oh yeah, he rewrote the Flash movie and ruined everything. No, dude. He just said, hey, why don't we use this ending scene for the movie? Like, don't need to rewrite anything. Like, that's all. that's what's going on. And it's just maddening to me. James Gunn's DCU will be successful. It's going to be successful. Again, I know, Triton, you probably don't want to hear that, but it's true. It's going to be successful. It's going to be probably far more successful than the DCEU was. I'm not saying immediately. I'm not saying that Superman Legacy is going to come out to $1 billion. I'm not saying after 2 or 3 movies that they're going to see $1 billion movie. Look, right now, $1 billion movies you're lucky to sniff $800 million for a movie right now. Especially domestically. Domestically, films are down 20% from 2019. And I go back to 2019 because really since then, it's been down big time. And yes, the box office has gone up. It went up 70% then 20% or 40% then 20%, but it's still down 20% this year from 2019, the last year pre-pandemic. And that's crazy. And you take a look, you can't expect, with ticket sales being down so much, you can't expect to see that many $1 billion films. Let's see. Lawrence says, James Gunn didn't have time to rewrite the Flash movie. No, he didn't, because he didn't get hired until November and didn't start his position at DC Studios until December. So, yeah, I mean, he wouldn't have been able to rewrite it. It was shot. It was in the can. Triton, I'll surprise you, but I love the first 2 Guardians of the Galaxy films. It's weird because I love the first Guardians. It's top 2 Marvel movie for me. I love the first Guardians film. The second one I'm not a big fan of. The third one I really, really enjoy. I enjoy the third one more than the second one. But yeah, the second one, I'm not a big fan of that. But hey, that's awesome. I mean, and I think, Triton, I know you're hesitant with the DCU, but look at Guardians. Look at Guardians as the example of what James Gunn is going to be able to do in some respects to the DCU. They're not all going to be like that. I mean, we've already know that James Mangold's making a Swamp Thing that's going to be more horror-esque. I'm sure Muschietti isn't going to make a comedy with Batman. And I don't think Superman is going to be a comedy, a straight-up comedy either. But I think it's going to have that same heart that Guardians has when it comes to with the Superman movie. And it's going to have that same heart. And I'm okay with that. I think it'll work. I think he's going to, James Gunn has multiple times has stated that he wants to allow filmmakers to be filmmakers. He wants to get away from this laziness that everything has become in regards to superhero films. And that's going to be allowing the directors and writers to write meaningful and direct meaningful films. Lawrence, for sure, James Gunn is going to be successful. Triton, fun fact, aside from Guardians of the Galaxy films, every film Gunn has directed has flopped at the box office. And I think it's safe to assume that Guardians was only a success because of the MCU brand. Okay. So, how many movies? I got to pull this up now. And while we do this, let's see. All right, James Gunn, IMDb. I guess we should pull this up here, shouldn't we? So we can all look at it together. So Guardians, the holiday special, Peacemaker, short doesn't count. The Suicide Squad, he did direct. Guardians got, I don't know what that, a music video. Guardians Volume 2. That's a video game. He wrote Belko Experiment. He didn't direct. Actually, let's do this. Wait, what happened? I want to just see what he directed. Okay. So just what he directed. And we're going to start back all the way at the beginning. So Traumaville Cafe, Hamster PSA, Trauma's Edge, Slither. Okay, Slither is a movie. What was the expectation for that? I know that it has a cult following. And again, when you talk about flop, when you talk about things like that, and I had a conversation on social media about this today, you can't just look at box office. You have to look at the reception, not just by critics, but by fans as well. And I say this all the time, whether it's Marvel, whether it's DC, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's whatever it is, you can't just look at the box office. And I get that when it comes to Hollywood, when it comes to studios, it comes down to the almighty dollar. I get that. I do get that. That's a TV series. Not going to talk about that. Super, yes, Super flopped. But Super was just stupid. Or no, not Super. Movie 43. And he only directed a partial of that, but that movie flopped as well. Super is another cult classic. That is another cult film that people love. Guardians didn't flop. All three Guardians didn't flop. Suicide Squad. Financially, did it flop? Yes, but you can't hold that completely against James Gunn. You can't. I get that there were other movies that dropped day and date on HBO Max in the theaters that were more successful, that made more money. I get that. But one, it's a rated R film. It was rated R. Rated R movies, and I get it. Yes, you have Logan, you have Deadpool, have all done fantastic at the box office. But a rated R film, those usually make less money than your normal film will make, especially a superhero movie, typically. On top of that, it was still very recent out of the pandemic, very short time frame after the pandemic. So that's number two. Number three, you cannot ignore the rest of the DCU surrounding it. The first Suicide Squad, it made $700 million. I don't care who you are. I don't care who would have directed it. The Suicide Squad was always going to make less than that because of how bad the first Suicide Squad was. On top of that, it was rated R. On top of that, you had the pandemic. On top of that, released day and date on HBO Max. And then you had the rest of the DCU around it. That just was not going well at all. So, and don't forget the last one before that was, what was it, Wonder Woman 84 and Birds of Prey? Look how bad those were. There's so many reasons why the Suicide Squad flopped financially. You cannot justifiably sit there and say, it's because James Gunn directed. It's because James Gunn wrote it. It's a fun movie. I enjoyed it. I liked it. And I know a lot of other people that did. But those people that did like it watched it on HBO Max. Why? Because they could. It was free. And why didn't they go to theaters? Well, one, it was for free on HBO Max, and they didn't want to go to the theater. So I don't hold what people say, oh, the Suicide Squad flopped. I'm sorry, I can't stick with you on that. Peacemaker was widely applauded. Holiday Special, widely applauded. Guardians 3, big success. So really, you're looking at Super and Slither as being flops. Let's take a look here. Slither box office. Let's see. Slither box office made $12.8 million against a $15 million budget. So yes, that is very much a failure, a flop. But you take a look at the Rotten Tomatoes, the IMDb, it's got higher scores, 81%, 87%. It's got a following. Yes, financially it was a flop, but again, people like it. Super box office. Super. Dragon Ball Super. Okay. Super movie. Let's see what that is. Yeah, that is 49% Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, this was a big flop for them. For him, absolutely. And I won't even try to defend that at all. I won't. Triton says I'd be prepared for Legacy to underperform. I don't think it will. I don't think it will. You know, I think people are going to see the bright colors. They're going to see, and don't get mad at me, Triton. Don't get mad at me. I defend this all the time for the Snyderverse, but people are going to see a smiling Superman on the previews, on the trailers. They're going to see him being heroic. They're going to see hope on the screen, and it's going to sell well. Billion, maybe not, but it's going to make money. I hold DC to a different standard to Marvel, and I'd hate a DC film like Guardians of the Galaxy. I like my DC deeper, more serious, etc. It's not to say that we won't get that. Not to say we won't get that. Unfortunately, though, the way the superhero movie trend is, that's not what the mass audience wants. That's not where the money is. Not saying we won't get it. I just don't think, and I wouldn't expect to get it all the time. Lawrence says a lot of people like the Suicide Squad movie. They do. They do. A lot of people do like the Suicide Squad. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about James Gunn's DCU. Do you think it's going to be successful? Do you think that Matt Reeves is taken over? Do you think that there's no confidence in James Gunn from Warner Brothers? You know, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, James Gunn should just cancel Blue Beetle. He can't cancel Blue Beetle. Oh, he should just cancel Aquaman. He can't cancel Aquaman. Those are Warner Brother Picture movies. They're not DC Studio films. So, you know, people are sitting there saying that he's making bad decisions when it comes to things that he can't even make decisions about. So, yeah, keep that in mind. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Throw it in the comments.